that's really what we want to focus on today, is this whole concept of thought, consciousness, and contact, and what it means to enter into a state of what I've called coherent thought sequencing to make contact with these visitors.
We find that this happens all the time to us in the field, and it happens sometimes intentionally. If we see an object in the sky, we'll ask it maybe out loud or think to it, if you're an ET craft, please do something anomalous, and they might, if it is, it might do a little zigzag or flash us or something. But it happens unconsciously as well, and that's normally when we're in a meditation, and suddenly, and this has happened so many times, we'll just so-called happen to look and open our eyes right at the precise time to see a craft coming down, which happened in Shasta about a month ago, and to both me and Dr. Greer, when we saw this amazing large chevron-shaped craft kind of float, twirling down. And it happened, for example, to the man who got the first video taping of the giant triangular formation that came over in Mount Shasta. We were in the middle of a meditation, and he had a thought in his head that said, "Look up," and he looked up and saw that. So these communications come to us all the time.
Right, and in fact, when back in the early beginnings of CSETI, we took an expedition to Popo, near the big, huge volcano outside Mexico City, and we were out there very late at night on a very high plain at the base of the volcano, and I was there with Sherry Adamak and two other people, and we were all in a very deep meditative state, and I was almost in a hypnagogic state. When we'd been traveling, I was very tired, and I was floating along, and suddenly, very clearly, a thought was directed towards me that said, "Look up, sit up, and look to the right." And that's exactly what it said, sit up and look to the right. I did so, and there was this massive triangular craft, completely and fully materialized, that was coming from the volcano towards us, and it was about 800 feet to 1,000 feet across on each side of the triangle. So it was like 3 football fields across on each side of this massive triangle. And it was moving towards us, and I began to signal to it, and it turned and came right over towards us. And then it made a circle, sort of circled us, and it was only maybe 200 or 300 feet in the air. And as it then departed going towards the city of Puebla, I signaled to it one last time, and the whole receding edge of it, the whole side of the triangle that was facing us, it was now moving away from us, lit up and signaled precisely back to us in a communication. Now, while that was going on, all of us were bilocating through consciousness, and we're on board the craft communicating with the pilot. And the beings that were on this craft were these tall, luminous white beings, very glowing. And I remember specifically seeing the occupants, and we were communicating on that level while this craft was fully materialized in three-dimensional space-time and while we're signaling to it. But the entire process of it started because we had entered into a deep state of consciousness, and we were remote viewing their location and sending out sort of a searchlight beam of awareness showing them where we were. And this is part of what I want to get into, is this whole concept of coherent thought sequencing. Now, I want to point out that if you go to disclosureproject.org, there is a series of 2 different CDs that have meditation CDs. One is the mantra meditation CD that teaches the meditation approach. The other one is one that actually goes through this coherent thought sequencing training that trains people how to use a deeper state of consciousness and then enter into remote viewing of the object, the ET object, no matter where it is in space. It could be in the air, it could be out in deep space, it could be in another galaxy. And then to coherently use thought to show exactly where we're located. And what I want to describe here is part of what this technique entails. And it's something that we'll be doing at this conference at Rio Rico that begins just in about a week. We're going to be in Arizona with about 180 to 200 people, and we're every night going to be on the roof of this big resort making contact using lasers and electromagnetic tones we send out into space. But we're also going to be doing a group meditative process where we go into quiet, unbounded awareness and then begin to remote view deep space. And then once we see an object in space with our conscious mind through the remote viewing process, we then connect to the spacecraft or to the ET beings and introduce ourselves as ambassadors from Earth to their civilization and invite them to come. And what you do at that point is that you show them our galaxy, our solar system. You zoom into the Earth. You zoom into North America, if that's where you're located. You zoom into the Arizona desert. You zoom into the area southeast of Tucson, Arizona, where Rio Rico is, and you zoom into the exact location where the group is doing its contact work. And you do this on a continuous streaming of thought basis. And that is done for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour at a time. And that streaming of thought, that coherent thought that is sequencing and guiding them in like a landing light at an airport, but it's doing it through the sort of a column of awareness and thought connecting to the ET craft and guiding them in. This is the technique that we teach because it's very, very effective, and it's what the ETs that I had contact with in 1973 when I was hiking up in the mountains of North Carolina, up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and had my contact that I talk about in the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge. That's the experience that I had. I was in a deep state of consciousness. I had a meditation. I went into unbounded mind. I then, afterwards, had clear contact consciously with an ET, and there was actually one that materialized physically right beside me on the mountain. At that point, I then dematerialized and ended up on a spacecraft where we kind of co-created this whole technique of contact. And it was an amazing experience because basically, I think the reason that I had this experience is that a few months earlier I had had a near-death experience where in that experience I had a full sort of God consciousness and cosmic consciousness experience. And they knew, the ETs must have known, that experience stayed with me because I later learned meditation techniques using mantras. And I began practicing that very, very regularly and very devotedly. And began on a daily basis having these sort of experiences of expanded states of consciousness. And then this contact happened. And I was told they were very interested in a young boy, because at the time I had just turned 18. I had my near-death experience when I was 17 in the spring of 1973, and I turned 18 on June 28, 1973. What happened is that these extraterrestrial civilizations were very interested in the fact that there was someone such as myself interested in outer space. You know, my uncle had put the first man on the moon, designed the lunar module. The senior project engineer at Grumman that built the lunar module. And I had had a sighting and contact with ETs when I was 8 or 9, and now I've had that experience. So then I think what happened is that they realized that I had the experiential foundation for understanding how contact can be made on a not just happenstance basis where you just happen across something, but where you make it happen, where you actually connect with them and vector them in and invite them in for a purposeful encounter that is planned. And that's what we're doing, and we have been doing since 1990 with the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And you'll see at cseti.org/contact that this is going to be the big focus of what we're doing at this conference in Arizona beginning on the 24th of this month, October, where we're going to be going out there and doing an experiment with mass consciousness with a couple of hundred people entering into that state of consciousness and making contact with these civilizations. And we're going to have a very high-powered laser, and we're going to have these electromagnetic tones, and then we're going to have the entire group going into this deep meditative state, then go into the remote viewing mode and see where the ET spacecraft are that are in space or around the Earth, or perhaps even within the Earth, because they do have places at times where they're actually in mountains and underneath the surface of the Earth or under the surface of the ocean, and then guide them to that location at Rio Rico, Arizona, while we're there for those 3 nights. And Colin Andrews will be with us doing this, as well as Dr. Ted Loader and Dr. Lynn Katai, who has had contact in the Phoenix area with the Phoenix Lights, and the entire senior CSETI contact team will be there. So those of you who can join us, you're welcome to come to that or to some of the upcoming events that we're doing in Joshua Tree, California, up in the high desert of California. Joshua Tree National Park is a place we've been going through since 1996, and we're going to have a whole week-long expedition for a much smaller group, maybe around 40 people, out under the stars in Joshua Tree. That will be happening in November. I don't have the dates here in front of me, but you can go to
the week of the 15th.
Those dates. And we'll also be doing just a one-day training workshop in Costa Mesa, California, also in November.
November 14th.
These are opportunities for people to learn how we're doing this and what we're doing, and to receive the meditation instruction and understand how it is they can become ambassadors from Earth to these civilizations. And the central operating paradigm is understanding consciousness, higher states of consciousness, the unbalanced state of mind, and then how to then awaken within that quiet, centered state of mind, see where the ET craft are and what they look like, and connect to their communication system, and then using this coherent thought sequencing, actually connect to them and then show them, zoom in exactly to your location. It's very, very effective. Of course, it presupposes people being able to enter into a quiet meditative state, which is the first thing you have to learn to do, and that's why there's such an important emphasis on learning how to enter into quiet meditative consciousness, and then from there being able to remote view, seeing with consciousness into deep space, and then from there being able to use an active protocol of guiding and vectoring these ET beings and their spacecraft onto our site. And once you learn it, it becomes easier and easier to do with practice. And people have been having experiences where literally craft have appeared at their homes, in their backyards. They've been on. We have groups that are, small groups of 3 or 4 or 5 people who are now all over the world practicing this, who are sending us reports and also images and photographs of events that are happening. And so what you find is that these extraterrestrial civilizations are very eager to respond, so long as the person doing it is doing it without prejudice and fear, and understand the concepts of transdimensional reality and these basic concepts of meditation and remote viewing and coherent thought sequencing, those 3 components that we use in the training process. And by doing so, almost anyone can learn to be able to make contact with these beings and to be ready for contact. And they can appear in a million different ways. Interestingly, we had one man that came last year to one of the events, and he told a very almost hilarious story where he had gotten the CD of the meditation and also the CD for the training of how to remote view and do the coherent thought sequencing, and he was practicing that and then fell asleep. And when he did that, his wife went into a lucid dream state where she actually had contact and then went out of her body in an out-of-body experience and saw that there was an ET craft hovering right outside their house and actually just above ground level, and that she had this prolonged encounter with the ET beings who had been called in by her husband. Now, her husband didn't recall during the dream state any of this, but she, who was not practicing the protocols, had this amazing lucid dream encounter. And he asked me, he said, well, how is it that I did it, but she got? I said, well, because the 2 of you are together, you're unified, and she was just more awake in her dream. You may have experienced it and not recalled it. And this brings up another big issue, and that is a lot of people get very literalistic and materialistic in their view. And certainly we have had extraterrestrial spacecraft and physical beings fully materialize in the flesh with, the metallic craft, and it's humming and it's spinning and it's leaving electromagnetic effects around us and what have you. On the other hand, it's possible, and I think this is probably very, very common, that these extraterrestrial civilizations will stay in a transdimensional state and interact just on the etheric and astral level, which for humans, aside from visualization, the most profound way that most humans have that is in the lucid dream, where they're awake within the dream, conscious within the dream, and it's full color, and you're floating along or flying or whatever it is, and that lucid dream state is very real. It's as real as the physical dimension, but it is the transdimensional etheric or astral component of conscious light that is very much related to the form that an extraterrestrial spacecraft enters into when it resonates and makes a quantum leap faster than the speed of light and faster than the speed of electrons and matter into this etheric form. And so what you find is that many people will have their contact begin to happen in the lucid dream state. And this is something which people in the West who tend to discount the spiritual state will discount those experiences. I said, well, no, don't discount them at all, because this is part and parcel of the experience, and that interstellar civilizations, if they're going from one point in space all the way to Earth and back, they're traversing this non-local, non-linear, etheric and astral realm as easily as we would communicate with a cell phone or move across the skies in a jet or a rocket. I should say more easily. And so this is why it's really critical that people understand that the conscious state and the lucid dream state are all part and parcel of this experience, and part of what we train people to understand and also to utilize. That when we're on these expeditions, we emphasize that even as you're going to sleep at night, you can do a protocol to make contact and then allow the contact to continue during the dream state.